What's it like to run English cricket? Is it actually an impossible job? Joining me and Jonesy this week is someone whose career after playing is almost unique. Asher Giles went straight from the dressing room into running Warwickshire cricket, whilst also picking the England team, then coaching England, running Lancashire, overseeing Warwickshire again, and eventually becoming the managing director of England cricket. Now he's back in the county game as CEO at Worcestershire, so this isn't just another former player. This is someone who shaped the game at every level. Actually, welcome to Close of Play. To have
Thanks,
you on.
Sanjay. Good to be here.
Do you remember your old mate?
I do, yeah. And all those, that's where we differ. He ran cricket. I had to help a lad run his first ever cross country, and he managed about 20 metres at a time. That was my first introduction after the dressing room.
Mate, Ash went to run England cricket. You ran away from cricket. I think that's pretty much what happened. I think you're fine. Let's start, Ash, on the England stuff. From a management perspective. When you had it is one of the most scrutinised jobs in England, an English sport probably, and you had it for a while. Is managing England actually an impossible job?
Look, I don't think it's an impossible job. It's a very difficult job. It's the job. Well, when you're in my line of work, I guess it's the job you aspire to. You want to be the top of the pile, if you like. You want to test yourself at the very top of the game, and that's the job to do if you want to do that. But it is difficult. Is it impossible? No, definitely not. But does it have a shelf life? Yes, like most of those jobs. I don't think it's the sort of job you could do for a decade nowadays, particularly just with both the pressures, but also just the time commitment, and it's pretty full on.
Jonesy, do you see Ash going into that side of the game after he finished?
Yeah, he always that sort of personality. Probably the speed of it surprised us, but Ash was always the level-headed, the father of the group, and so it didn't surprise he got to that level. But as I said, just so quickly, it was a credit to him, and we were all watching with quite sort of that proud look, and sort of wishing him the best at it.
What he means, Sanjay, is I'm really old. I was the oldest man in that team in 2000. The grey hairs gave it away.
Didn't always behave it, and I'm leaving it at that.
How much is
Absolutely.
How much of the success at England is structural versus just having a great crop of players at any particular time?
Well, I think there's a mix. You don't win anything without good players, that is for sure. But you probably only have to look back as far as this winter, and we probably don't want to get too far into that. But when you look at things like preparation, organisation, and discipline, all of that stuff, that's all structural stuff that's equally as important. And you've got to get the balance right. You don't want to shut players down. You don't want to shut playing groups down and, keep them too tight. But at the same time, playing groups don't always know what's best for them. That's why you have coaches and managers, because you have to make difficult decisions, but it's your job to make those decisions around planning and organisation, and sometimes asking players to do the difficult things. So I think it's a real balance. But if you had to pick one thing, well, you're definitely not winning anything without good players. And that's, a lesson to me, Sanj, is when, in coaching, I think there's a danger when you start. You almost look for teams in your own sort of shadow or whatever.
Mold or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. But then you look at the teams Jonesy and I played in, you need genius, and I don't think there's any other word for it. The likes of Flintoff and Peterson, Palmy at times, absolute genius. You don't win things without genius. Yes, you need you also critical mass of really good people who are level and strong and consistent, which I think both Jonesy and I were, but genius wins you big events. Genius wins you those Ashes series.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, we did the Ashes obviously when it was on, didn't we? 7 o'clock in the morning, we were recording this show on a daily basis, Jonesy, and we I thought you'd fallen over there. No wonder what you were up to. And then
Dog's trying to get in.
I thought that was it. Well, normally when he leans over to the side, he brings over some sort of prop, Jarno. He's got some kangaroo knackers that are like is a bottle opener. He's got Mr. Men mugs everywhere. It's like you never know what's going to happen. But we talked about Baz McCullum, and actually you said it just now, Ashton, you're around sides being built in the mould or the shadow of their coach. And I think that's something that England have inadvertently or deliberately done with this side, is that it's built around how Baz McCullum played his game. And I guess both of you played against him. Did you, Jonesy? Ash, did you play against Baz?
Yeah, I played against Baz a few times. Yeah.
I think he made his debut in, what was that series? Must have been 2004 at home?
2004, yeah.
Yeah, he took the gloves there, and he didn't have if you'd have seen in that series, I don't think you would have given him the career that he ended up having. He did. And so, but it comes back to also the other thing we talked about, Ash, was Keezy loves talent. So genius talent, probably along the same lines there. And that's something that my time with Keezy, he's always been drawn towards people with extraordinary talents. Shane Warne, Keezy loves spending time with him. And it's just because he felt they could change the match without, on the spin of a hat. And so that's what he's looked for. And so a lot of the players that you see have got that extraordinary talent. But you're right, you need the boring ones like us, who just the engine room to keep going. And and those other guys, because probably you think of our side, Fletch spent a lot of time managing those other big characters, and he wanted that evenness from the others, because that's the nature of sides. If you're trying to battle 11 guys and work out managing 11 guys, that's gonna be tough work.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's I sort of have called it critical mass in the past. You can probably afford 2 or 3 of those geniuses maybe in a team, but then you need a critical mass of people who actually quite like doing the boring stuff. And that's not to say those guys weren't professional, but they were different, and you had to manage them differently. And I think Fletch and Varney, actually, Varney was an exceptional captain, and in that environment, one size doesn't fit all. It can't fit all. How you treat Andrew Flintoff wouldn't be how you treat me or you. But both those guys, I think that was the management of our team was one of the defining factors of that summer as well.
From a management perspective, though, Ash, are you judged unfairly then on the results? Because you don't directly control what goes on, but ultimately you carry the can.
Yeah, ultimately, results are important. Clearly, we're in the results game, so you can't hide from that fact. I think our circumstances were slightly different. We'd been managing through that period of COVID for 2 years plus, and I do think for a part of it, we were keeping the lights on. That's what we were doing. We were the first international sport back to play. We designed these biosecure environments, and we had these long periods in these bubbles, and it was incredible actually what the ECB and from a performance side, what my team put together was incredible. But I sensed those goalposts did move a little bit once we got to Australia. I think people thought the world had returned to normal, but for us it hadn't. And when I write in my book, so I'm not giving away particularly any secrets, that I think when we left these shores, I really, in reflection, we didn't have a chance of winning those Ashes. We were a pretty broken team, physically, mentally, having spent all of that time locked away. And then you add to that on top, Sanj, you're going to play the best team or one of the best teams on their own turf, around. And our record of winning there once in 40 years or 36 years at that point. So your odds are pretty stacked against you anyway. So look, whatever it was, what I do know is when I came out of the job, I was pretty broken. I was a broken man, and that's a bad place to be. I think we all have our battles from a psych point of view, but yeah, and going back to what I started with, it's a job you always wanted to do. That's the top of your profession. At the end of it, when I came out, it was like, you can have it, have it back, and that's a pretty sad feeling.
It's
Jonesy,
not just
you've
a
spoken about-
job
go on.
match, as test match to test match, is it? That's the one thing I think people sort of see the matches on TV, and now they think this is when they're working. For these guys at the top, the planning is years and years in advance, and that just can't happen overnight. What's happening in the moment is going on, but there's also so much other stuff, and that's one thing cricket has become. It is all consuming now. The time off that these guys, players, administrators don't get is just as taxing as anything.
Yeah, you're right. Going into that Ashes series particularly, because we spent a long time trying just to get the players on the plane, to have them comfortable enough to go to Australia, because Australia had some of the toughest quarantine rules and COVID rules going. And I was at one point, most days on Teams calls from 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, sometimes through till 7 o'clock at night, not leaving my desk. And that begins to wear you down. And then, as you say, Jonesy, suddenly then you're on a plane. Oh, now we've just got an Ashes tour to take care of. And it wouldn't have been just me, but for many of us, your batteries are already low, and therefore, what I'd call your armor to deal with that pressure is also low. And so you're much more susceptible to things that sometimes might bounce off you. But that, as we saw this winter again, it is the toughest of environments. And I suppose in football, it's World Cups, can be in cricket, but in cricket, for us, it's more Ashes series, regime changes generally, because that pressure's so high and expectations so high.
Was that the one where Sam Billings drove literally across Australia to get to a test match? Was that time? I remember there was a bit of a thing about him. He couldn't catch planes because of the interstate, so he just opted to drive from Perth to wherever. And that's the sort of stuff people were dealing with. How do we get someone through all these biohazards? And let's stick him in a car and have him drive 18 hours.
Yeah. And what we were asking, in reflection, was harsh. We, the constant testing, having things shoved up your nose, and not being able to see your family, not being able to go live normally. And let me say that there were people who suffered far worse, clearly, and lost people during that time. So we are talking about sports people, but some of the media have said to me, their perception from here was that we had returned to normal, that we were going about our lives, and it was far from that. And as I say, ultimately, they were a pretty good Australian team as well, quite a bit better than this one we've just lost to. But again, that's the nature of the game. I'm much more able to reflect more evenly now than I was immediately after. But again, that's just, where you are at different times in your career, psychologically particularly.
Did you feel then that in that period you were firefighting as opposed to building something?
Yeah. We had some, during my time, we had some incredible wins. Winning the World Cup for the first time in 2019 was a day I'd never forget. To say the beginning of going to South Africa then, Chris Silverwood's first or second tour, coming from 1-0 down and winning that 3-1 was great. We went to Sri Lanka and actually started that tour. We hadn't played a test, but started that tour really confidently. And then suddenly COVID hit. And I remember being here, and within a week we went from tours fine to we're getting them home. The whole world shutting down. And then it became a lot of firefighting. Again, some really good wins. I talk about setting those environments up, and we're really proud the way we were able to get the game back on, which people would tell us brought them so much joy, sitting at home and being able to watch international cricket. Things like, I remember during COVID, we lost the whole team because we had an outbreak in Bristol. And overnight, myself, Mo Bobat, Chris Silverwood, James Taylor, we put together a new squad, a new management team. So picked it, communicated it, announced it within about 14 hours, I think. And then we went on to beat that Pakistan, really strong Pakistan team. We beat them 3-0 in the one-day series with what was basically our 2.5 team. So those sort of wins were great. But after that, I think we felt going into that, probably halfway through that second, after the India tour away and then going into that second summer, everyone started to feel it a bit more and was just becoming just a bit fed up with it. It was just becoming hard work, and more and more niggles started from management and players. And I absolutely understand it. I'm not criticizing that. We all knew why. And I was feeling it as well. But as Jonesy sort of touched on, you just sort of, part of it, you get your head down and you just try and plow through. And then one day it catches up with you and it's not very pretty.
My phone must have been turned off in those 14 hours. I missed that.
You were close, Jonesy. We actually got down. I think we got down to something like the 12th keeper on the list. And that's no disrespect to John Simpson, who actually did brilliantly. And, what a joy for him to come in and make his England debut completely left field in those circumstances, but acquitted himself really well.
I mean, there's a lot the fans don't see, Ash, but, things like, what you guys go through behind the scenes. Obviously, as fans, all we see is what goes on the pitch, if you like. Do you think there's been a lack of communication in that sense? And I think Rob Key's trying to address that now, but do you think he's going about it the right way?
No, well, I think, firstly, whoever's regime it is, there's always stuff going on that people don't and shouldn't know about. It's a bit like the iceberg. There's the bit on top of the water, then there's a hell of a lot underneath that moving parts or threats or dangers or issues. And many of them will be employment issues. And you shouldn't really, be communicating or sharing that stuff. I think they could have been a bit smarter this winter on some of that, Again, I've talked about it, but the Harry Brooks stuff in New Zealand, to think that was never going to get out, I think was probably a little naive. Because generally the media store those, they know those things are happening, they store them up until they most need them, which is when you've just been beaten in an Ashes series. So it is difficult, but my sense was that group, when they left these shores, unlike us back in the previous away Ashes, was, I think we've got this. I think we're going to win this series.
Yeah.
And I think there was an element of, what you call hubris. It's just a bit of overconfidence. And then suddenly you're hit like a sledgehammer, and before you know it, you're 2-0 down and it's game over.
It is such a fine balance what you give to press, isn't it? It's that, because they want stuff. They're around us all the time on tour, and that they are storing up stuff and they've got contacts everywhere. But it's what you give. You have to give them something, and then it's what you keep back from them. I remember, thinking back to my time, there's times probably when I wanted to go and talk to the press when I wasn't performing, but Fletch and the guys above me sort of held me back. And it's sort of, on reflection, you think, I wish I'd given them some time. But you can totally understand it, because they're all hunting for stories nowadays. It's all, what they can do. And so it's so difficult for whoever's in charge to work out what do we give them and what do we don't. But I think the one thing to learn is not to try and hide stuff, because they will find it out. And in this day and age, it gets viral pretty quick.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference from when we played And it was bad enough, Jonesy, some of the stuff we got and went through as players. But I remember that Ashes tour when I was managing director, and you could do an interview, and you think it's gone pretty well, and the immediate stuff lands okay, and then within 2 or 3 hours, the whole narrative's changed, the story's changed, and this is that it's almost a thirst for 24-hour news. You've got to have it keep coming all the time. Whereas I remember when I very first started playing, and you'd have journalists come out, so the Sunday writers, for example, the Broad Street writers, broadsheet writers, and they'd take you out for dinner and they'd write once a week and they'd have a whale of a time. Now these guys are literally pushed for report after update, after news, after, something that's got a bit of extra spice about it. And I certainly don't miss that, because it's very difficult to manage. And when things are heading in the wrong direction, it's like a tsunami. It moves so quickly. So
is Broad Street the main street in Birmingham?
Yeah, I was thinking about Broad Street.
Yeah, you're thinking if journos only saw what went on in Broad Street after that 05, they were, yeah.
2005, yeah.
There was a good curry house there.
But yeah,
Shimla Pink. Do you remember it?
Shimla's is good. Yeah.
Shimla Pink, very good it was.
Yeah.
All the stuff that you went through in that, as you've told us about in the last 20 minutes or so, Ash, did that lead to the mindset development stuff that you're doing at Worcestershire now? Did your own experiences sort of drive that?
Look, a little bit of that, but I think when you look at the pressures today for everyone, not just your players, but all my staff, in my role as CEO, I've got responsibility for everyone across the business, and everyone's dealing with much more pressure. So I always use this analogy of like a pint glass, or like this glass here, and so many of us just live with the level at the very top all the time, all those pressures going in. And so it doesn't take much for that to start overflowing. And when it starts to overflow, that's when you're in trouble. And I say that's across everyone. And so I wanted to give something back to our people, support our people. And I was introduced to Gazing Red to Blue. I met Martin from Gazing Red to Blue about 4 years ago. Loved the concept straight away. So the concept basically is, if I simplify it, red head, blue head. Red head's this emotional state, can't, stuck in the past or the future, a lot of doubt, a lot of fear. Blue's the in the moment, focus right now. What can I control? The difference for me from stuff we would have normally done, Jonesy, in the past is actually, we'd have heard people say, just concentrate on, focus on the process, focus on the good stuff. But that isn't reality for us either. And actually the red to blue is acknowledge the red stuff's there. Acknowledge that you feel crap, or you're having a bad day, or that really annoyed you. But then the art is to zoom out and make a choice about where you place your focus. So it's all right, that's there, but I'm going to zoom out and I'm going to choose to now focus on this here. The reality is it's still there, but and those sort of things can happen really quickly or really slowly. But for me, whether it's someone who works on reception for us and is first contact with our members or guests, or one of our best players, I want to give them a toolkit where they can perform better. And ultimately, it's about dealing with pressure. So I'm really proud of it. I think we're one of the first businesses to do it from top to bottom. And Gazing Red to Blue are a great little company. So for us, it's a fantastic partnership.
You can roll them into your school, Jonah, can you? You could have done with that.
If I had one, mate, I'm on it. Don't forget, I'm unemployed at the moment.
Yeah, that's your old school. Mate. Sorry, is what I meant. Yeah, it's been a whole drama.
No, well,
whole drama.
Yeah, exactly. But no, it does sound fantastic, and something like that for the whole sort of every single employee, top to bottom. If I think of cricketers and I'm working in the women's environment at the moment, and I think it's very pertinent with stuff that they bring with them to matches, and finding that balance of being able to acknowledge, that there's some stuff going on in that, but then that now we're in a bit more professionalized, scrutinized environment with everything being streamed. How do you then turn to that blue moment of performing? And sounds fantastic. And well done, Ash.
No, it's actually the All Blacks. They've used the same system. So there's a great clip of Dan Carter talking about it when he's kicking, and how he goes from that red state when he looks up and goes, "Oh my God, there's 60, 80,000 people watching me. I can't miss this, to actually triggering back into, whether it be through breathing or, another method of getting himself back into blue and just going, right, okay, I'm in this, ball goes over there. But yeah, really pleased with it. And we're going full speed ahead with it.
Richard McGaw used to talk about looking at a point at the top of the stadium and focusing on that to go from red back to, or to go to a blue head, and sort of, times where it was all kicking off around him. A lot of focus on the county game at the moment. Was it like that when you were England cricket, either as a selector or actually both of you as players, selector in your case, and as MD, Ash, was it always a lot of focus on county cricket?
Look, I think ultimately our England players come from the county game. We're part of our jobs as counties is to develop future cricketers, because let's not forget, a lot of the money, or the majority of the monies in the game, come from international cricket. So, and the formation of the ECB originally was to represent the counties at the table, if you like, at the commercial table. That relationship's changed a little bit, but the county game generally also comes into a lot of focus when you don't win Ashes. And I did it. I went about the county game when I was there. And we all understand we've got to get the balance right between the traditional and the commercial. But I still think the game's changed in a way that, are we truly developing cricketers that can win in Australia or India consistently? Well, let's use India as an example. We have struggled to win there, but now, our best spinners hardly bowl. They don't get a chance to bowl in the right conditions. When I was coming through, and I used to bowl a lot with a guy called Neil Smith, who played at Warwickshire, we knew July and August was pretty much ours. We just bowled. It's fantastic. That just doesn't happen anymore. So how are we going to develop these guys?
Yeah, Jonesy and I picked our England 11s about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and then we developed this ever-growing watch list of players to add to it. There's not actually that many spinners on there. I mean, it's one of those things where, you went for Dawson, didn't you, because you wanted a more defensive spinner, and I went for Rayan Ahmed because I wanted a bit of flight, turn. It could get wickets, anything could happen type of thing. Quite a few of the spinners are on our sort of secondary list. People like Matt Critchley, are predominantly batters who bowl. But I wanted to go through a bit of that watch list, Jonesy, with you. But there's not been much cricket. What did you call it last week? D-Mob week or something? You said Kent were on a...
No, D-Load. They have D-Load weeks.
D-Mob. D-Load,
yeah,
that was
D-Mob.
It. That was it, D-Mob.
D-Load.
I think
I did a little bit at Kent on Saturday, and I think I saw a coach on a D-Load week. He was just having a bit of a chat there. So, you do need it, but
he wasn't coming off a train at 2 a.m. after being out on the lash in Lords, is it? No, not one of those. Not that coach. I'm going to read out some viewers' messages to us. I think it's probably David, who's a guy, remember a couple of weeks ago, who wrote in and said that he thought that Harry Brook should be promoted to open. He also thinks that Reece Topley should be given another go. Reece took 1 for 89 against Leicestershire the last few days. Josh Hull seems to have sort of forgotten. He took 1 for loads against Surrey last few days. And he also suggests George Hill from Yorkshire. Now, he went well against Hampshire. He took 5 for 46. I guess my question because I know Ash doesn't really want to get into individual players and stuff, obviously, given his role and everything. But do England need that variety of a left armer? Ash, obviously, you were one. So I'm guessing there's going to be a biased answer here. But does that help?
I think variety is nice, but ultimately you pick your best team for the conditions in front of you. I will say, I'd be amazed if there isn't change, given what we've seen in the winter and then the pressure that's been on this management team. They've got to make some change. It's just, otherwise, yeah, the pressure
What's
will
the
rise
point of
again.
county cricket?
So it'd be interesting to go to. Yeah, and I hope they've moved away from this message that unless you bowl 87 mile an hour and smack it out of the park, you're not going to play for England, because that's, there's definitely been a connect between county cricket and the England team over this last couple of years. Do players really know what it takes to get picked for England, and do the directors of cricket and head coaches really know what it's going to take for their players to get picked?
Yeah, I think we've spoken about this before, haven't we, mate? That the bowlers kind of got away with it, given how the batters have gone. But they didn't bowl particularly well down in Australia. And I've been making the case, Ash, for Sam Cook to have a recall. I know he only played one test against Zim last year and got battered a bit, but he's a different bowler now. He took 5 for 68 against Warwickshire at Edgbaston the other day. Jonathan Down wrote in and suggested that he only took wickets on incredibly conducive pitches at Chelmsford, which Jonathan says has been very low scoring since about 2015. But the man who's making a lot of the noises, well, himself and with the ball, is Ollie Robinson. He's, again, two players who don't bowl at express pace. But anyone seen anything of Sussex's Tom Haynes at all? He's a name that's popped up in Jonathan Down's message to us. Have you guys seen him?
I haven't seen a lot of him, no, because unfortunately my job, although I carry director of cricket responsibility still, the CEO role is just so broad. I don't get to watch as much cricket, and certainly cricket elsewhere. When we're playing at home, I will certainly watch as much as I can, but I don't get to watch as much cricket as I used to.
If anyone's going to exemplify an England cricket fan, it is Tom Ridgway. As he writes in, you are assuming they will drop Crawley. Key, McCullum and Stokes are very stubborn, and a word that's come up twice in this podcast and hasn't come up at all in the last 50 episodes. Oh, this is the 50th episode, Ash. I forgot to tell you. So in the last 49 episodes is hubristic. They are very stubborn, hubristic fellows and one-trick ponies. They all keep laying down the same cards. No strategy, just hoping on a wing and a prayer it comes right. I guarantee they'll give Crawley one test. He'll hit 80 in the second innings after a lame shot for virtually nothing in the first, and so he will stay for the rest of the series. Welcome to the England cricket fan. But that's in all seriousness, Ash, that's what you've got to deal with, haven't you? That's the reality of how the man or woman on the street thinks, without the information we spoke about before.
Yeah, look, everyone's allowed their opinion. That's the beauty of, everyone's a selector. Everyone wants to play almost fantasy cricket or cricket manager or whatever you want to call it. But, when you're in those positions, you've got to try and be removed from that. You're paid to do a job, and you're paid to do that job because of your experience and, what you bring to the party. So, but saying that, I'd be a little bit surprised, and I love Zak to pieces. I think he's a great guy, but I'd be very surprised if he makes that first test team.
Yeah,
you've had a bit of a chat.
Fortunate enough. Yeah, I've been lucky enough to throw at him a number of times recently in the nets, and the women's coach James Hockley had a really good conversation with him, and Zak knows and admits that he's under a lot of pressure. He's not daft, and he knows from performances, but what I'm seeing is this pressure is actually moving him forward, and I think you're likely to see a better player than you did throughout the Ashes. He's learnt a bit more about himself. He's simplifying things, and over the last week or two, I've seen a better player in the nets. He's sort of understanding a bit more that needs to happen. So it wouldn't surprise me if he goes out on Friday. I think we're playing Worcester. That they are playing Worcester. That Zak Crawley may well find some touch.
Not this week, Jonesy, please. Bloody hell.
Yeah, I'll get a big seam ball and nip him around. But he does look. I know a couple of weeks ago I called him a walking LBW because he was having a real torrid time. But gradually, and the other thing that you got to understand as a player, he said he's been given about 500 different pieces of advice over the last 4 weeks, and so he's got certain people he trusts about his game, but wherever he go, everyone's willing to give him what they think he needs to do to get fixed, and so he's had the ability to sift out. And so I think Zak, I do think someone else needs to be given an opportunity up the top, but I think it's likely that Zak will score some runs, which will put his name in the hat. But I think what we saw in the Ashes and a little bit before that, they will look elsewhere.
Well,
yeah, that's what I mean. That's the current. Yeah. There is no other currency, but I think for him to get anywhere near picked at the moment, he's going to have to get some doubles.
Triple.
For Ben McKinney, big
Ash
double
going,
100.
no.
Ben
Not
McKinney,
this week.
big double 100. James Rue, your man's got runs again, Jonah. 80 odd and 50 odd against Hampshire last few days. But he doesn't open. Does that make a difference?
We sort of talked about this last week, doesn't it? And it struck me when I looked at it, and I thought he's got 80 odd again. But yeah, again, batting 4. Are they brave enough to take that chance at the top? I think yes, they should be, because like I mentioned, when I saw him last year at the Lions game, his technique for me is built for batting long, he can bat up the top, he plays the ball really late, and his temperament, I know even Jason Kerr down at Somerset's been vocalising that as well. So yes, he's batting 4, but from what I see, my eyes think that he's got the ability to open.
I think what's interesting, Sanj, is when you're and Jonah and I've seen this in the past, is when you're not in the team, you're so much a better player than anyone in the team.
Yeah.
Until you've played a couple of matches, and that pressure ramps up pretty quickly, and it's even an existing player, so as you said, Jonesy, someone like Zak could not be in the team at the start of the summer, get some runs, and then they're all going, "Oh, we'll hail the Messiah again, get him back in the team," and we've seen that in the past. So it can be a pretty horrible environment, and for the players, yes, we've been through it, but families, those people close to these players, it's a luxurious position to be in, being an international cricketer, but it's a pretty tough environment at times.
Yeah, it does. The stress plays. Jen called the first pair of pigs I had here when I dabbled in a bit of small holding. She called them Reed and Pryor.
Yeah, good stuff. Right, listen, there's a bit of this show that I really like, and it's mainly because Jodie's so crap at it. But we're going to go into silly points. So we've tried various guises. We actually found something, Ash, that works reasonably well. And I'm stressing the reasonably part. So it's called Who Am I, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to read out sequentially 10 clues. And you can just shout answers at me to guess who this player is, okay? Jonesy, so he's actually done all right. He's got to about 6 or 7 and he's got it. And I'm going to have to give him massive clues.
Are they current players, Sandra? Are they?
No.
It could be anything.
No.
It could be anybody from
we could
from
be
about
going back to W.G. Grace's time, Ash.
Yeah, you got Headley Verity. We've got all sorts of people going on. Right. You'll have noticed, Jonah, I don't know any other players from that era, because every time I make the same semi-gag of 1895, the only player I mention is Headley Verity, so I should probably do some more research on that one. Question 1. I am a deeply religious Roman Catholic who, as a young man, seriously considered joining the priesthood before committing fully to a career in professional sports. Anyone? You not come across anyone sort of praying before a match or anything like that? No? Neither of you?
Wasn't David Shepherd David Shepherd was a priest, wasn't he? Not David Shepherd, who was the umpire, but the other David Shepherd.
Yeah, the Reverend David Shepherd. Yeah, no, it's not him though. But good answer. See, Ash is already putting
I'm in a world
some
of
sort
trouble
level of thought
already.
into this.
Yeah.
Unlike
I'm
some of
in
your
trouble.
answers. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Minus
Two.
love shame. Does that work?
Yeah, knowing you've thrown some random guess and it'll be right. I hold the record for the most test matches played before scoring a maiden century, finally reaching 3 figures in my 97th match against Bangladesh in 2007. I should say Ash also
Wow.
Jonesy sort of like tries to reach for his phone and co-pilot at this point, but he seems to have his hands somewhere where I can see them, which is nice. Nothing going on that one. Question 3. When I was feeling homesick on long international tours, I would famously entertain the dressing room by singing love songs. Any crooners in your side that you know of? No? Jonesy, he's got that look. No, or is that just confusion?
2007.
Any
I'm
crooners
trying to work
kicking
out
about?
if you. Yeah, because it can be from any country, can't it?
Yeah.
It doesn't.
That's the thing, right? And actually, that's a good point because the original clue did have the name of the singer, but I've taken it out because it may have been too easy after that. I once took a staggering 26 wickets in a single 3-match test against the West Indies in 2001, including 14 in one match. So it's a guy. So the guy can bowl, he can sing, doesn't mind a
It's not
prayer or
Gillespie.
two.
Whoa, he beat me to it.
What was that?
Not Gillespie.
No,
Gillespie.
no. I thought you might say that with the maiden century one. I built
Yeah.
up my fitness as a child by riding my bike up a hill with 3 people clinging onto it. That's as good as my Carberry clue last week about hitting the ball between the legs of the dining room chairs.
Don't worry,
No,
Ash. He eventually breaks and give us something of relevance. Don't worry. It'll.
Well, I need to make it enjoyable for myself first before I actually get to any serious clues. I am the only bowler to ever take a hat-trick with the first 3 deliveries of an international match, achieving this against Bangladesh in the 2003 World Cup. See, Jonah, mixing. What are you looking at? Jonesy. What
No,
are
it's
you
me.
looking at?
That's me in thought. That's me.
Oh, is it?
That's me in deep thought. Yeah.
If he suddenly comes up with the answer, you know it's not what happened. So, decent bowler, this bloke.
Not Chaminda Vaz.
Yes,
Vaz?
Giles! Jonesy's been beaten for the first time. Excellent. It is Chaminda.
Where have you plucked that from?
That's
I
brilliant.
just thought up front, who's going to get wickets like that in the era? I knew he could bat a bit, but the whole training thing sounds a bit like someone who's grown up in a tougher environment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There you go. Giving it some thought. The other clues, Jones, you were going to be.
Well done, sir.
I'm famous for having one of the longest names in sport history, but most fans simply know me by my last 2 names. I'm the first person to take an ODI 8-fer. He took it against Zimbabwe. Second most, you'd have got it at this point. Second most successful, I reckon, left-arm pace bowler in the history of the game after Wasim Akram and then the 96 World Cup. So there you go. Ashley Giles, you can come again. Jonesy beaten for
Thank
the
you.
first time. Let's just finish off then with Worcestershire and your role there. We talked about then the mindset initiative that you've done there. Can counties survive as they are, or does something need to change structurally for the county game to be more to thrive again in the future?
I think we've think over this last year. So there's a couple of things that have happened. Well, the big thing that's happened, obviously, is the sale of the 100 franchises. And for us, the upside of that is huge, because we were in a position where at best we were living hand to mouth, but we were struggling with debt, we were struggling with cash flow, and to be quite honest, our future looked really uncertain. Now, the 100 monies are not not a silver bullet. They don't cure all your problems, but certainly, being able to, for example, just pay off your debts overnight. We're debt free now. Allows us to take a breath and actually look towards the future a bit more. We clearly have a unique problem around the ground, which we might talk about as well. But the sale has done something else as well, and that is widen the gap between the big clubs and the small clubs. And that, I think we have to face, that gap is probably irretrievable now. So I did a piece in Wisden, I think it was this month, and I say that the worst thing we can get caught up in is trying to win Division 1 of the county championship, going toe to toe with Surrey and Lancashire, and because we might have a bit of money, but they've got that money plus and very deep pockets, and it's a road to destruction. Doesn't mean we're not ambitious, but that gap between the haves and have-nots, or haves and haves a lot more, is huge. But that's okay. I still think there's absolutely a place for 18 counties, but our purpose may be slightly different. We're still, our role as part of the community, entertainment. We can punch above our weight on the field. We can develop players, both men and women. All that stuff is stuff we've done for years and we can continue to do. We might just have to face, when we develop players, at some point they might move on. That's just
Jolly, very quickly.
Yeah.
I know it may not be able to, because I know from talking to Simon Cook at Kent, and I think the perception is, everyone out there, that it's like let's call it 25 million, which every county is getting, and someone's like, there you go, spend it. But it's not as simple as that, is it?
No. So there are certain guardrails around the money. We haven't suddenly got this big pile of cash in the bank and we could just spend it willy-nilly. And I think it's a sensible move. We want access to that money, but for what we need access for right now, I think we're pretty happy, which is around, capital projects like venue, revenue generating activity. Look, I'm okay with that. But yeah, we haven't just got free access to that cash. But I think also, Sanjay and Jonesy, I think looking towards the future, the model that most of us are based on is we have these venues that are becoming more expensive to maintain and run, that actually only really produce revenue, their main revenue, for about 7 or 8 days a year. I mean, it's a crazy model, really. So I think when we look towards the future, what we've got to try and do is make sure we're much more diverse businesses. So we're still, of course, very much cricket at our core, but we have to have other aspects that have that regular turnover of revenue, whether that be, more traditional exhibitions, conferences, parties, whatever, but look at other things as well.
Yeah, it's always surprised me in the UK. I mean, in the States, they're very different in terms of the model. The stadia are the centre of the community, and they've got multiple purposes. But here, very much, sports stadiums are set up as sports stadiums, and there's so much unused space. I mean, there's absolutely no reason why. I did a bit of work for one of the football clubs a while ago, just looking at space and seeing what they could be used for. And the argument I made was that, underneath this 17,000-seater football stadium was a vast space of unused space that had all of the amenities in there. It had water, it had gas, it had electricity, it had everything. Yet there was nothing there. So if Deliveroo can pick up from a mall, they can pick up from a football stadium. Do you know what I mean? It's like dark kitchens or whatever you want to use it for. So there are multiple sort of opportunities, I think, for stadiums to look at different revenue streams. You touched on the ground before, and I guess that alludes to the well-known issues that you have there with flooding at New Road. Does Does some of that the capital that you've got, will it be sort of used in looking at how that venue or another venue can be used for cricket and for other purposes?
Yeah, so we've been quite open around looking at an additional venue, so needing a second venue. We're in a strange position in Worcestershire where there aren't really that many options of where we could play first class cricket, particularly T20 cricket. So we are looking at that. The ground at Worcester is on many people's top 10 in the world. In terms of, if you sit there midsummer and the sun's out and you have that view of the cathedral, it's just gorgeous, and it is beautiful. But the flooding situation is getting worse. So we've had, over the last 3 winters, we've had 8, then 4, and then this winter 6 full floods. And when, full floods is full floods, 8 feet in the deep end, and 4 feet probably in the shallow end. And, this last couple of weeks, because we play our first home game on Friday, we literally have to put everything back together again. No one else has that problem. And whether it be the painting or the cleaning or the removing or the bringing certain things back in, buildings even, it's an absolutely unique problem, probably in professional sport in this country. And, that's what comes of building a cricket ground on a floodplain, I guess. But
I remember going to Worcester, and we knew before we were getting on the bus to go there that we wouldn't bowl a ball because it had flooded. But not only that, downriver, I think the local sewerage plant, there'd been an issue there, and so the outfield was pretty grim. So, but we still had to go. So it's that was not a highlight of 4 days of my career. And I also probably dropped the worst catch I've ever tried to catch at Worcester. And a lot of the students would bring that up if they felt, if I'd been a bit harsh or anything, they'd just get on Google, and it was pretty easy to find. And sir, can you just come and have a look at this? What happened here? So we've got some memories, Worcester, and it's the traditions, isn't it? You're right, and that's the hardest bit for counties. Gloucestershire have also talked about sort of moving closer to the M5 to make it easier for people to get to. I know at Kent they're talking about Beckenham, but I always come back to the traditions of the game, and cricket is so entrenched in tradition. It's such a hard thing to think of taking that and moving it away potentially.
Yeah.
Your dropping catches comes up quite regularly by you, actually, in this podcast.
I was good at them.
Yeah, you were, apparently so. But as you can see, Ash, behind Jonesy is a catch he actually did take. What are your memories of that? And where were you in that picture? Well, not in that picture, but where you stood?
Yeah, so I was down at fine leg, and I remember the ball before that Harmy tried to bowl a Yorker, and it just hung out wide and turned into a full toss. And Brett Lee smashed it, and when he hit it, I thought, that's it, it's game over. Fortunately, it went straight to Simon Jones on the boundary. 2 yards either side, probably would have been 4. Got another chance. And I remember that ball going into the pitch. And because you see the line, I already start running to my right because you're naturally trying to cover the angle. See Jonesy roll, take the catch, finger goes up. And it's one of those moments I often talk about when there's almost like this dead silence that, apart from the bloody Aussies in the crowd who are loud, you turn the volume up and it's just this noise around the ground. And I remember running in, and as I was running in, Jonesy was running that way because these Aussies who were right behind him had been giving him so much heat the whole match.
Yeah.
And I turned round, ran after Jonesy to grab him to bring it back. That's why none of us are in the pictures, I don't think, at the centre. But it was just a huge relief. And it's only, we could talk about that series alone for hours. Yeah. I just talk about it as, for us, I think involved in it. It was like boys' own stuff. It was just a huge privilege to be involved in what is still arguably the greatest series of all time.
You had a good game there yourself, didn't you?
Yeah, I did okay. And that was on the back of not doing very well at Lords, so it sort of got me back in.
Well, none of you did well at Lords. Well,
no, probably apart from Kev. Well, Harvey bowled well. Fred bowled all right, but Fred's series really launched at Edgbaston as well. It's where he went from never played against the Australians before the Lord's Test, and then he hit that. He suddenly, he'd landed. I mean, that over he bowled to Ponting, or Langer and Ponting. Obviously, Jonesy was right behind it. I remember being at about fourth slip and thinking, I hope it doesn't come to me. So whatever they felt like, batting 20 yards away, but it was, one of those amazing moments. But the whole series was full of, it was like a highlights package. Every hour was like a whole day's worth of highlights, and every day was like a whole test match. It was incredible.
Yeah, we did a show on it about 3 or 4 shows ago, I think, didn't we? Where we spoke about each test, and from a fan's perspective, it was the series that united the nation. Especially given what had gone on.
Especially remember though
with the bombs,
Edgbaston Jazz as being Giles' home ground. At one point when they're counting down, I think you might have been at Gully at that point, and you think you're working out your escape plan.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, I did think that. I thought, how, from the position we're in, how are we going to get out of here alive? People have been baying for blood, but it's still the one thing when we talk about it, and we did it last year a bit, Jonesy, didn't we? But when you talk about that series, you generally can hear a pin drop in a room. And you don't have to, some of the stories are good. You almost don't have to overflower it. You just go through it and go through those important moments, and people just love it. And that's great. 21 years on now.
Yeah.
It's an amazing thing to be involved in. I'm very proud of. I'm proud of playing with these guys, but just I say it's an absolute privilege to be involved in.
It's great to have you on, Ash. Thanks for everything you've shared with us, and particularly thank you for being the first person who's beaten Jonesy at Who Am I in this run of podcasts that we're doing. And I'm going to have to make sure that I clip that out and put that all over socials. He's always pleased with that sort of stuff. So, mate, thanks very much, Jonesy. Thanks very much, mate, as always. And I will see you soon.
Pleasure. Cheers, guys.
Cheers. Great to see you, Ash.
Good to see you, mate.